Mitchell, a three is good. Plus the foul. A chance for four. Only three to shoot. Gonna have to make something happen. Clark through the lane, reverses it in. Post feed. Boston. Oh, beats the clock. Wow. Indiana will reset. Clark fire away. You bet.
Hello and welcome back to the Pacers Fever Show, your go-to podcast for all things professional basketball in the state of Indiana. And today, it's all about the Indiana Fever, who kick off their season on Saturday, May 17th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time on ABC. I'm your host, Logan, and we are hyped to kick off your 2025 season preview for one of the most exciting teams in the WNBA. In this episode, we're diving deep. We're going to recap last season, break down the biggest takeaways, and look at how the Fever have reloaded this offseason. We'll also be talking about the growth of the league, expansion, and then how it's impacting the Fever, the WNBA, and of course, we'll wrap things up with our predictions and expectations heading into the 2025 campaign. So whether you're a longtime Fever fan or just jumping on the bandwagon, and don't worry, there's plenty of room. We've got you covered this season. Let's get into it. So this is a podcast that covers all things professional basketball in the state of Indiana. So we do cover the Pacers and the Fever. I've been doing the Eastern Conference Finals run that the Pacers are currently on, and we will be covering their season as well. But we will also be covering the Indiana Fever heading into this season. We'll be doing game recaps, live reactions, and then their run to a postseason, hopefully. So a lot of things coming up on this show. We are always looking for people to join the show, and we can also be looking for some co-hosts. So if you're willing and able to do some of these episodes, just reach out to me. We are on all socials at the Pacers Fever Show. If you just look us up and search us up, you can find us on YouTube as well, and anywhere you get your podcasts. We're always looking for somebody to jump on and join me as a co-host, because this is a lot easier when I've got a partner in crime. But again, that's just a little bit about the show. We are on the same feed, so you can listen to your Pacers stuff. If you're not a Pacers fan, you can listen to our Fever stuff. If you're not a Fever fan, you can listen to our Pacers things. So welcome to the show. Glad you can join. We are very excited in Indianapolis, and I'm not in Indianapolis. I'm actually in Orlando. But there is a lot of excitement around Indianapolis. I grew up there. I was there until I was 5 years old, and then we moved to Charleston, South Carolina. But my parents, my grandparents, and my immediate family all grew up, born and raised in Indianapolis. Big fans of the Fever, big fans of the Indiana Pacers as well. And so they've just kind of passed that along to me. But I'm excited about the Indiana Fever season. I think this is the most anticipated season that the Fever have had in a very, very long time. And talking about that, we're going to actually jump into 2024 first, and then we'll jump into the 2025 preview prediction portion of the show. So last year, 2024, the Indiana Fever enter that season with a prized possession of Caitlin Clark, who was the number 1 overall selection in the WNBA draft in 2024. Fever draft Caitlin from Iowa, and she joins the team. And from there were a lot of expectations, I think, on Caitlin herself, and then the team as well. I think Christy Sides had a huge opportunity to prove that, she could be the head coach that she needed to be for this Fever team. Caitlin Clark, the future of this franchise, the future of this league. I mean, she's become quickly the face of the league, and had done so even, I think, before she stepped foot in the league, which is very difficult for somebody, I think. You look at leagues across the world, and you don't typically have somebody coming in for their first year becoming such a key part to that league that they're stepping into. It usually takes time, right? Even if they're a prodigy of sorts, if they're the next coming of the most historic player in that league's history, there's still a learning curve, right? There's still this there's still this period or this window where that person has to prove that they belong on that stage, that they can play at the levels in which they need to become the face of said league. I think Caitlin Clark comes in as probably the most anticipated player to any sports league in the world. And that's incredible, and a lot of expectations, though. I don't know how Caitlin handles that, but she handled it very well. She got this team going in the right direction in her rookie year, won Rookie of the Year. And what started out to be a very tumultuous and difficult time in the WNBA for Caitlin and her teammates playing against some of these other teams turned into a pretty successful season. I would say, especially after they've gone through this long drought of missing the playoffs, rebuilding a team, finding the right head coach, getting the front office involved, getting the investment in this team, and keeping this team in Indianapolis and keeping this team relevant in the WNBA. And it was interesting. I think the ownership group with the Simons, also with everything that was going on in the front offices with the Pacers and the Fever, they kind of felt like they were going through the same kind of struggles at the same time. So, the Pacers haven't really been relevant for like a decade, like true relevance, where they're getting back to Eastern Conference Finals, challenging for championships. It's been a decade since the Paul George era. It's been a very long time since the Tamika Catching era, and the Fever haven't been in the postseason since 2016. So it's been a very, very long journey for the franchise. It's been a very long journey for that Indiana Pacers and Fever and that sports and entertainment ownership group. And I think when you look at what the Fever are doing, it's just as exciting as what the Pacers are doing. Like, these two teams are you don't see this, where the Indiana Fever and the Indiana Pacers are starting to get to the point where they could both be one of the best teams in their leagues, in their respective leagues, which is incredible. The fact that the Fever have the best player in the WNBA, arguably, and we'll talk about what the expectations are for Caitlin Clark in just her second year. She's already in that category of one of the best players in the WNBA. And then you flip it over to the other side of this sports franchise, or like, I guess this ownership group in the Indiana Pacers, and they have one of the best point guards in the league. And both of them, both of them being the best point guards in their leagues, respectively. I mean, it's just incredible what this city is experiencing in sports. It's exciting with the Fever and the Pacers. And I think that the Fever are going to add to the fuel that the Pacers have kind of ignited here with their Eastern Conference Finals run. I mean, it dates all the way back to when the Pacers did the Eastern Conference Final run last year. Then it goes into Caitlin Clark coming to Indianapolis. Then Caitlin Clark has a very successful season and turns this team around, has this franchise turned around, and they're heading in the right direction of being one of the top teams in their league. Pacers enter 2024, have a rough start, but then get to be one of the best teams in the NBA. And now the Pacers running through the Eastern Conference Finals, and then you're going to have the Fever starting up here on Saturday at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, where the Pacers and the Fever are going to be playing at the same time, which typically doesn't happen unless the Pacers are reaching the Eastern Conference Finals. So what an incredible time to be a basketball fan in the state of Indiana. Let's talk about those Fever, though, last season, because this is where the excitement starts, because of the success that the Fever have had. And like I said, the Fever reach the first round of the playoffs for the first time since 2016. They get swept by Connecticut in their 3-game series, though, 2-0, and they are eliminated. But again, like I said, huge that it took 8 years to get to the playoffs. They finally get back, and they have arguably one of the best players in the league going into 2025. Indiana was 1-5 against that Connecticut team, counting the playoffs in 2024. And now former Connecticut head coach Stephanie White returns to her second stint with the Indiana Fever. But that Connecticut team was just so experienced. They lose some starters. They lost quite a bit. So Indiana could slide into that spot where Connecticut was, and in that 3 spot, because Indiana finished with that 6 seed, played them in a series that, again, I felt like Connecticut obviously controlled the whole time. The second game a lot better than the first. That first game, I mean, it's just very reminiscent of a team that just doesn't have any experience, gets to the postseason, and in that first game, they just look completely overmatched. They settled in nicely in that second game and gave Connecticut a challenge. And if it wasn't for a Kelsey Mitchell miss, I mean, you're talking about a Fever team that was challenging to at least run into a third game, which would have been back in Cambridge. So just a great ending, I think, to a season where I know there were a lot of expectations going in and what Caitlin Clark could do. And I think it was kind of that wait and see period. And just like it is with any young player, anybody that's a rookie that's stepping into the league for the first time, where the strength of the women, where the physicality from each of the ladies are going to be challenged. And I think Caitlin learned quickly that it wasn't going to be quite as easy, I think, as some of the college games that she had played in. But did she adjust? And boy, did she adjust. I mean, just incredibly. She really learned how to navigate, I think, the physicality of the league. There were still some struggles that she has. She turns the ball over quite a bit still. But as a young player, I mean, there's some things that she does that not many people in the history of the WNBA can do. And going into 2025, I think you're going to see a completely different version right from the start. And that's going to be huge for the Fever because last year they start 1-8. They only get one win in their first 9 games. And there was a lot of concern. I mean, I remember there was a lot of discussion of what the team was going to do, what direction they were actually going in, because Christy Sides seemed to not understand what the rotations were supposed to look like, how they were going to play. They didn't really have an identity. I think their identity relied heavily on 2 very young players in Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark. And they were hoping that Caitlin would come in and be that savior. But also I feel like there was a little bit of lack of trust there. And I think that's ultimately what leads to the decision. And obviously when Stephanie White becomes available and is going to be willing to come back to Indianapolis, I think you automatically hang that phone up and you run right down the hallway and let Christy know that she's no longer employed, because I feel like Stephanie White is a coach that did tremendous things with a Connecticut team that could translate to this Fever team as well. And with veteran additions, one of her own from that Connecticut Sun team, I feel like the Fever are heading in the right direction with a lot of really good young talent that I think was enticing for Stephanie to step back in. And Stephanie had played here before, she'd coached here before. So I think it was all very enticing for Stephanie White to step in. But, Christy Sides, for what it was worth, I think turned the team around where they started really poorly and ended up probably going, so you go 19-12 in that in the last 3 months or 4 months or whatever it was in the season after starting 1-8. I mean, that's a really good turnaround for a team that seemed to be thrown down on the mat and didn't really know how to respond. I mean, I remember there were a lot of people talking on X and in the national media that were talking about, like, is Christy Sides really meant for this team? Could they get rid of her? Like, she was struggling with rotations and there were some issues maybe with Caitlin Clark and just the discussions they were having and what the team was doing, what the front office was doing with Christy Sides was a concern. And it just, all these things started to kind of snowball. And I think that's what ultimately makes it an easier decision for the front office to move on. But that being said, getting back to your first postseason after 8 years, I mean, Christy Sides did some things that were very positive for this team. And I think going forward can be used by Stephanie White to understand just how this team operates and what best suits this, what kind of system best suits this team, which I think it's a lot of physicality, getting more 3-pointers up. They were a team that finished 5th in 3-pointers last year, shot attempts. And I think this year you're going to see more and more of an offense that's kind of unleashed, but you're also going to get a very defensive minded head coach in Stephanie White, where I think at times with just the physicality and the youth of the Fever and also the rotation of starting lineups, I just think there was no continuity. There's no consistent play by any of the players because I think, when you're rotating lineups as much as they did last season, the Fever, I think you run into this issue of continuity and playing together. That chemistry is just not there. And you can see it at times. And a lot of it's because they have a young point guard. A lot of it's because they have younger players like an Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark. I guess, just looking at the roster itself, the way it was constructed it doesn't really fit what Caitlin Clark and them were trying to do as much. But as Caitlin became more comfortable with Aaliyah Boston, with Kelsey Mitchell, I think that's when you started to see the team really roll. And she learned quickly. I mean, as the season went on, Caitlin got better, a little less on the turnover side. Again, she's not somebody that would typically give the ball up a whole bunch. And I think as the years go on, that's something that she's going to work to improve. And I think that's something that needs to improve for 2025. But overall, I mean, you look at Caitlin Clark and she'll go down as, if healthy for the rest of her career, she'll go down as one of the best WNBA players of all time because she's headed into that level. She's in that trajectory. You don't often see a rookie come in and average 19 points a game. She also is close to being she's got 8 assists per game as well last year. She's close to being a 2010 second year player, which is just unheard of at her age. And the ability that she has is just, I mean, we all see it every day. We don't really have to talk too much about Caitlin at this point. But yeah, the start of the season was not easy for Indiana, winning only 1 game in the first 9 games. Clark had some really good games, but then there were also some really tough ones in her WNBA debut game. She had 10 turnovers. And in the first month had 51 turnovers. And that's just the speed and the pace of play. I mean, it's so hard for a young player to step in and understand the physicality of the league that she became an instant target, like a huge target on her back. Teams wanted to prove to her that they were here, that they were going to be physical with her. And this is no longer the college game. You are in the WNBA. These are professional women making a livelihood on the games that they are playing and the competitiveness that they had. A lot of these players being stars of their own, they wanted to show Caitlin that she wasn't just going to come in and take over this league right away, that there were going to be some learning moments. And Caitlin had a lot of those, especially in that first month. It got rough. I mean, it was very tough for her to hold on to the basketball. Teams were, getting as physical as they possibly could with her without crossing a line, or, some did cross a line at points, getting too physical with her. But again, I think it was more to do with, you're not just going to come in here and try to run this league. Well, Caitlin often responds to that stuff. And by doing so, and I mean through her play, she'll give you a little bit of chirpiness, but she does a great job of responding with her play. And as the season progresses, you started to see those flashes of just how special she is going to be and how special she was in college as well, and what that level of play is going to play like in the WNBA. I feel like she started to learn how to use screens. She's really well. I felt like she did a lot better with defenders and people that were on ball, getting around those picks that Aaliyah Boston was setting, finding Kelsey Mitchell on the kickouts. It turned into a much more flowing offense as the season went on, because I think Caitlin was figuring out that she wasn't just going to be able to dribble everywhere and get herself out of trouble. While she can still do that, she's a tremendous ball handler who does a really nice job of scoring off the dribble, creating her own shots. I do feel like there are times where she would dribble herself into trouble, and then that's when you're making those long court passes, or those passes that would typically work in college because the players just aren't as quick or as long in college as they are in the WNBA. And those passing lanes are taken out quickly by some of these players that are faster. And they owned Caitlin Clark for that first month. They caused her a lot of problems. That lone victory came on May 24th. Then Indiana began the season with 7 games in 12 days. So that wasn't easy. The team looked gassed. Caitlin Clark, I think because of the way the college season set up, and then her run through the college tournament and her involvement with her commitments to the college game, and then getting right into the NBA or WNBA draft, and then getting it, I think it was like a month in between when the college game ends and when she's drafted and has to play. There just wasn't much of a break for Caitlin. There wasn't really much of an off season for her. And as she stepped into the season, she looked gassed. They looked gassed. And it was a huge factor of not starting well. And then you add in the fact that they just didn't have any veteran depth. So when you've got some of the veterans going down, or if you got some veterans missing games, that's where the Fever really started to struggle, I think, throughout the season. And, like a player like Kelsey Mitchell, that's a veteran player, but also, she's on the older side, at least a little bit older. And she's going to have a hard time at times staying consistent in those stretches of games. And then you add in the younger players who aren't used to playing at this high level, having to play that many games in that 12-game stretch. That's just a lot to ask of a player. And I feel like it was a perfect combination of just not starting well, not having veteran depth, not having the people there to kind of guide Caitlin down that road. it really was tough for her to figure out just exactly what they were doing on the offensive end, how you compete defensively. I think there were times too with Caitlin Clark that you see the holes defensively, but you also see them with like Aaliyah Boston, who's still a younger player. So again, the rotation of starting lineups, the inexperience, the fast pace of play, the really tough stretch of games, playing good teams, it snowballed into the Fever just not starting well. But after that, I mean, when you go 1 for 8 and then you finish the season 20-20 at 500, you go 19-12 over the next 31 games. That's incredible. I mean, that's a good clip, and that shows you just, I think, what this team can do going into 2025. And they had some pretty good wins towards the end of the season. But yeah, they really struggled to start the season. It was a mixed month in June for Indiana as they showed some resilience and some improvement. They played 11 games with lots of highlights and very close losses. Indiana had some solid wins over the Dream and the Mystics. Boston had a game against the Mystics where she dropped, against Atlanta where she dropped 27 points and 13 rebounds. Christy Sides in June also talked about the fact that like Caitlin Clark needs to get more shots, try to average 15 shots a game. At the time, Caitlin Clark had at least 15 attempts from the field just 6 times throughout those games. And that was, you're getting over towards the halfway point in the season where Caitlin Clark just isn't getting shots up. And I think that's the other thing too, is that implementing her into a system. I think when you're coming in as a young player, you're trying to prove to your teammates too. I think that's something that doesn't really get talked about enough, is the confidence level that you're trying to gain with your teammates who have been in this league, who have had success in this league. And she has to come in, especially as a point guard. This is very tough because you are the floor general. Like, you are the person that makes the offense go. So if you're coming in, you're really struggling, the offense is going to struggle. Everybody else is going to struggle. They kind of look at you like, what's going on? Like, are you going to be able to do this? And I think with all those expectations, with even some of her teammates expecting a lot from her because of what they'd seen her do in college against them or from afar, I think there was this expectation that Caitlin was just going to step in and right out of the gate, start fast and become one of the best players as quickly as possible. But it did. It took some time for Caitlin to adjust to this league and this physicality. And finally, she starts to do so. But she had one of her best professional career performances on June 7th against Washington. She drops 30 points. Caitlin does. The dynamic duo of Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston are officially in full swing in that June mark. And that's when you really start to see Caitlin utilizing that pick and roll, getting Aaliyah Boston into the paint. And Aaliyah Boston is just a completely different player when she's getting set up like she was in those last couple of months of the season, where Caitlin just operating on her own causes so many defensive issues, where Aaliyah Boston gets into the post against a smaller person and just does an excellent job of finishing around the rim. And even she's got some growing pains that she still has to do. She's not been in the league much. So she's got some growing pains. Caitlin's got some growing pains. But as those two start to grow together, and they'll continue to grow this season as well, this is one of those pick and roll combinations that could be and should be probably one of the top ones in the league. It probably number one in the league at some point. And it might even be this season, but still, there's still some growth with some of these players. And I think this year they'll have the benefit of having that better depth that they really, truly needed. And I think that you could see a pretty special team in combination between Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston for years to come. I mean, to have two cornerstones of a franchise with a Kelsey Mitchell, with a DeWanna Bonner, I think it elevates this team to a completely different level. But we'll get to that. We'll get to this year's team soon. It's worth noting that Kelsey Mitchell really started to step up like a key role veteran and consistently putting up 20-plus points a game and coming in the clutch when she needs. She hits one of the bigger shots later on in that season. And one of the biggest challenges that they faced was getting consistent play from Kelsey Mitchell and the veterans in that team, even though there weren't a tremendous amount of them. And, there weren't players that were going to be around past this year. There was still that need of consistent veteran leadership. And I don't know if Indiana really ever got that until Kelsey really started to find her groove. And you do get some veteran leadership from a person like Lexi Hull. So again, I feel like this Indiana Fever team struggled at times because there just wasn't that voice in that locker room, right? And we talk about this so much in sports and especially basketball. Is you need that leadership. You need the ability to lean on somebody that's been there, done that, that's going to be consistent. That you're going to understand has at least some experience in this league to give you an idea of what's going on. And if you're looking to Lexi Hull, I mean, Lexi Hull's been in the league for 3 years. This will be her fourth year. I mean, that's still a good amount of games, but it's not like Lexi's the ultimate veteran yet. I mean, when you've got a young team, it's very difficult to find that voice, to find that even that kind of leader that you just maybe isn't as vocal, but is kind of lead by example. And Kelsey Mitchell can be vocal at times, but I think she's a lot of lead by example. And you see that in young players where they look more to what veteran players are doing, how they go about their business, that day to day. What does recovery look like? What is after a loss? What does that look like? Film sessions, like there is so much that goes into, and the complexity of a NBA and WNBA season, I think is lost on many fans in both leagues. You've got to have somebody that knows what they're doing, has been through it before, and has struggled with adversity. Like when you're in the WNBA, you got to have somebody, I think, that's been through other teams and to kind of see how they do it. And I think it's always better when a veteran's seen other teams because they can tell you like this situation's a lot better, or maybe this situation's not as good. And I think that they can be that voice of reason in a locker room. But the Fever really lack that at times. But once Kelsey Mitchell really started to play well, that's when you really started to see, because as much as Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark are important, Kelsey Mitchell, a veteran person who can score a lot of points, who can hit the three, who can defend, like that's a really important role. And Kelsey finally steps up and is getting that going. And then that's when you start to see the Fever really take off. Now, that being said, they did struggle in the second half quite a bit, lost a lot of games going into the second half. So they'd come out, play really well, play their style, impose their will on teams in the first half. And then all of a sudden they'd lose games. They, get down to crunch time, you lose games. And again, that goes all the way back to not having that veteran leadership, that player that's just going to take over. And Caitlin will get there, I think, and Aaliyah Boston could get there too. Kelsey Mitchell is the person that they're going to have to lean on there. And it was just, that's difficult, right? Because you need somebody that's going to be able to create your own shot consistently. Kelsey Mitchell at times can, but you'd really like for somebody like Caitlin Clark who can absolutely dominate a game, take over, but Caitlin's just not to that point yet. And when you got down to the nitty gritty of games, if you cover up Kelsey Mitchell, who is going to be the option to go to try to close out games, it kind of leaves those other younger players to be exposed because they're just not ready to take that next step to close out those games. But yeah, it just seemed like the scoring runs in the second half, just like the ball movement was slow. The players seemed slow. They're behind on rotations. Defensively, they weren't as strong. Like this team really struggled in the second half. And I think, again, that all goes to coaching and leadership. July was historic for Clark as she becomes the first ever WNBA rookie to record a triple-double. She posted a 19, 13, and 12. That is 19 points, 13 assists, and 12 rebounds in an all-around spectacular performance against Liberty on July 6th. And then in that same game, she became the assist leader of all WNBA players. I keep doing that. Been talking too much Pacers lately. The Fever began making that huge leap into the Eastern Conference standings and looked a lot more comfortable. They started to rack up a lot more wins. And then time for the WNBA All-Star game where Kelsey Mitchell, Caitlin Clark, and Aaliyah Boston were selected. And Caitlin led all players with 700,735 votes. At one point in July, Caitlin had a double-double streak that lasted 5 games. They then clinched 2 huge wins against Western Conference opponents in Phoenix Mercury and the Minnesota Lynx, who made the WNBA Finals, and they dominated in those games. So against 2 very good teams who were both playoff teams, the Fever looked to be the part. I mean, they looked like they were finally starting to understand what what it took to beat big teams. And once you start beating the big teams and beating them consistently, that's where that momentum starts to build. That's where that confidence starts to build in Caitlin and Aaliyah and Kelsey Mitchell, Lexi Hull. I mean, that's where you really start to see that team start to change in their abilities and their confidence. They start to believe we can beat these big teams. We can beat these really good players. That was essential. And that's essential. And I'll mark that point too. When they beat those two teams last season, that was the mark of what they're going to be able to do this season too. Like that's where it starts, right? You always have that launching point. And I felt like the success that they had to get 3 All-Stars, the success that they had to beat 2 good teams like that, and then to be competitive in their second game against the Connecticut Sun in the WNBA playoffs. I think even though they're swept, to show that they're competitive, to be in a hostile environment in Connecticut where, that's a challenging place to play as a young player, especially in the postseason when it's your first experience, the first taste of the postseason, as it was for Boston and Clark. Lexi Hull too, like a lot of first experiences. And we've seen this in time and time again in other sports as well, where the first taste of the postseason typically doesn't go that well. You get that experience, you get bounced pretty early. In other situations, it's been like if you flip over to the other side, the Pacers who had gone in to the NBA playoffs didn't really struggle tremendously in their first postseason run, but I think got very lucky with injuries, but also had that veteran experience like a Pascal Siakam, where I do feel like that's what the Fever were kind of lacking, right? They're lacking that force, that veteran that's going to lead by example, be the voice, be the steadying of the ship. And I feel like that's where at times the Fever on these long, these runs that a lot of these teams would have in the second half, they weren't able to stop them because they didn't have somebody to kind of steady the ship. This year they will, but we'll get to that. It seemed as though everything was coming together in Indiana. They had players like Lexi Hull stepping up with Smith as well. And then the WNBA All-Star game and the break for the Olympics gave them about a 1-month hiatus. And then after that, they came out hot, winning 5 games with just 1 loss and reached a strong their goal of their win total. They matched their win total of 2023. And then their goal of surpassing that record, obviously, in 2024. That was a key to success for the Fever. And they had that goal of being better than they were in previous years and then trying to get to the postseason. I think as this team starts to turn that corner, that becomes their goal. Get to the postseason, challenge the teams in the postseason, see what you can do with some of this younger team. Comparing that team from August to May, it looked completely different. And then after that, beat pretty good teams in Seattle Storm and Mercury, but then lose to the Minnesota Lynx in August. And then a critical game. They had not beaten the Connecticut Sun in like 11 straight games. They beat the Sun in August. I think that was like the 28th or something like that. And Mitchell led the pack with 23 points. Caitlin Clark had 19. And it was a statement win. I mean, this is a team that they've struggled to beat for seasons. And I mean, especially because they handle them, the Sun handle the Fever really well in the playoffs. I mean, that's a very good team coached by a very good coach with great veteran players. And the Fever just had a very difficult time when the Sun had a difficult time with them. But that win in August was crucial. And in August, they break 500 for the first time in 5 years. I mean, that's crazy to think that, because like there's not many times. I mean, I guess there is, but like to be a team that's consistently under 500 who never get up to 500, that's bad. Like that is a really bad team. But this year they did it. I mean, the Fever did it in 2024, clinch a playoff berth for the first time since 2016, and they did it with wins over big teams like the Wings, the Sparks, the Dream. I mean, not as good as the other teams, but pretty solid teams and teams that they know they can beat, but pretty good wins. And to end the season, they clinched that playoff spot, and they have to go in and face that Sun team. And that Sun team was a very talented, deep roster, and they handled the Fever very well. When you're the 3rd best team in the league, I mean, that's a tough ask to try to beat them twice at home. or even try to force a game to where they could go back to Gainbridge in that game 3, but they didn't get it done. Stephanie White coaching that team to an incredible series win, advancing them into the playoffs. But yeah, I think it goes to show you just how special this Fever team can be because of, the first game they get absolutely smacked 93-69. And they match that with a really, really good game too, where I felt like the Fever had that chance to knock them off and force a game 3. But again, and you had a player like DeWanna Bonner for that Connecticut Sun team who is now on the Fever. Just veteran players like that who have the experience to go hit that 3 um, in the second game to eliminate basically the Fever of that season. And Kelsey Mitchell misses the 3 to end that game in game 2, and it ends in a way that I think you're like, we put up a good fight. This is a very good team that could go on to win the WNBA championship, which they don't, but this is a very, very good team that we competed with, that with more experience, I feel like we're right there. And that's what the Fever had. And that's why I think heading into 2025, you've got to feel really excited just by the fight that this team has. And this team is built very similarly to, and I don't always want to compare the two, but like, because they're both just built almost exactly the same at this point. I mean, the Pacers and the Fever, the way that this organization builds two sports teams, basketball teams, is just good character people, high character, high intelligence, tough, gritty, and also people that kind of been overlooked. I mean, Caitlin Clark, not so much, and Leah Ball, but like people that have been kind of casted away from their teams, or, getting chances, or kind of that ability to overlook people. I feel like the Fever and the Pacers kind of have a similar story in the fact that, a lot of people in a lot of places will overlook these two franchises, but at the end of the day, they're two that can become very competitive and also become two of the best teams in their leagues. So kudos to the Fever, who had a great 2024. Just some stats and some recognitions from 2024. Obviously, Caitlin Clark wins Rookie of the Year, an all WNBA first team pick, and led the league in assists with 8.4. She averaged 19.2 points per game. The Fever ranked first in field goal percentage at 45.6 and third in scoring at 85 points per game. Offensive rating of 106.1 last season, with Caitlin Clark, a rookie point guard, is a really good offensive rating. I mean, from the start of the season to the end, this team completely looked different on offense. Fever were next to last in scoring defense, 87.7, a defensive rating of 109.5, which was not great. That's something that Stephanie White's brought in to do, because that is her expertise. She is a very good defensive-minded coach who will get her team to be very competitive. I think defense, getting into passing lane, getting deflections, and especially with the personnel they have, they can do this. They'll be able to be a more physical defensive team. It'll just take some time, I think. The Fever played against some really good teams last year. And in recent years, they'd combined to 3 of 12 versus last season's semifinalists. So Connecticut, Las Vegas, Minnesota, and New York. This year in 2024, 2025, they'll look to be better there. But against the top teams, they really struggled last year, 3 of 12. Not 3 of 12, 3 and 12, 3 of 15, I guess. But yeah, Indiana had the second fewest road victories, going 8 and 12. Again, a lot of that has to do with experience. Hard to win on the road, especially in this league, but you got to have veteran players that are able to close out games in tough environments. And that was something that was difficult. They had the second fewest road victories among playoff teams. Let me clarify that. And those are the 8 playoff teams. The Fever were 5th in 3-pointers per game at 9.2. They have made additions in the offseason that should take them closer to being in that number 1 spot. They're gonna shoot some threes, and I think could end up in that number 1 spot of the number 3-pointers they get per game. And then the high scoring backcourt in the WNBA last season was led by Caitlin Clark and Kelsey Mitchell, who both averaged 19.2 points a game. And just kind of going through the stats of last year, talking about some of the players that should make their mark this season. I mean, you look at Kelsey Mitchell, 19.2 points a game. She was per game, she was 2.7 3-pointers made per game on 6.8 attempts. She shot 40% from the 3-point line. She was an 83.2 free throw shooter. Doesn't take a whole ton of free throws, but I think does a really nice job of creating a shot, getting her shot off, and converting from deep. Rebounds 2.5 a game, assist 1.8, and she had 1.6 turnovers per game. I mean, if you look at Caitlin Clark, the differences between those two, Caitlin had a 5.6 turnover per game mark, which is not good, which can be better. And I think Caitlin will be better in that category. Caitlin was 19.2 points per game, 6.1 field goals made on 14.5 per game, attempted 41.7%. So I think she'll shoot a lot better, obviously. That's a really low field goal percentage for her. She made 3.1 3-pointers per game and attempted 8.9. She was 34.4% from three. She was a 90% free throw shooter. I mean, she's a very good pure shooter. And so I expect those percentages to go up in her second year. The alarming rate, I think, would be the 5.6 turnovers. She's a really good rebounding point guard at 5.7. And she causes a lot of problems defensively. She had 1.3 steals per game. I mean, she's very good, very intelligent defender. And I think, those numbers will increase too. I mean, she's got an ability to just this year to really just become become a superstar level player. And in a second year, that's just, I mean, you just don't see that very often. Aaliyah Boston, 14 points a game, 5.9 field goals made per game on 11.2 attempt, and shot 52.9% from three. She didn't shoot very many threes, but when she did, 26.9%. She was a 73.6% free throw shooter. She did average 8.9 rebounds per game, 3.2 assists, some pretty good passing, big, and then 2.0 turnovers. Again, I think somebody else that could really, I think, cut some of those numbers some. And she had 1.2 blocks per game. So she's a good defensive player as well. I just feel like there are some growing pains with both Caitlin and Aaliyah. Lexi Hull, she had 5.5 points per game. She shot 1.8 field goals made per game on 4 attempts per game. That is a 44% clip. For three, she was a 47% 3-point shooter. She averaged 1 3-pointer a game on 2.1 attempts. Rebounds 2.5. She also had 1.1 assist, and she is somebody else too that I feel is only going to get better as Caitlin gets better, because you're opening up that 3-point shot. I think she's going to be great depth, and not having to rely on her to start as many games. She can be a 3-point threat off the bench this coming season. So I'm looking forward to seeing what she provides this year, because she's not having to carry the load of the offense. I think sometimes last year there were moments where they kind of looked to her to also add some scoring, and she scores pretty well, but not to the point of a starting guard, I don't think. So when she is replaced in the starting lineup, I think she becomes a very dangerous threat off the bench to kind of add in there with with like a Caitlin Clark substitute kind of thing, or a Sophie Cunningham coming in off the bench as well. You got Natasha Howard also with the team, and Kelsey Mitchell with the team. So depending on the rotations, I mean, I feel like Lexi Hull is a good option to have, just because I think she provides some scoring, some versatility a little bit too, and the ability to score off the bench is going to be huge, because it's just depth that they lacked, and that adds somewhat to their veteran like leadership off the bench, and the vets coming in, where some of that second unit last year, they just weren't experienced enough to really do much. And a lot of those players are gone. I mean, you look at it, Alyssa Smith, gone. You say Katie Lou Samuelson, gone. Christy Wallace, no longer with the team. Damiris Danzis, also, or no, she is on the team. Sorry. I was reading the wrong list. Grace Berger, no longer. Celeste Taylor, and then Victoria Saxon, both gone. So a lot of turnover for the the Fever lineup and the rotations in the roster. But again, I think a lot of veteran depth added to this Fever team. So let's talk about 2025. Heading into 2025, what does this team look like? So they go and add Dewana Bonner. Sorry, I'm tongue-tied. Dewana Bonner, Natasha Howard, Sophie Cunningham, Sydney Colson, Brianna Turner. Those are all really good additions, especially with two of those players into the starting lineup, which we'll talk about rotations here soon. But again, a really good roster, I think, that the Fever built, and maybe missing a piece, but I feel like they're just one piece maybe away from really contending. Maybe it's depth, and providing more of that depth off the bench. A scoring option would be good, but I I think you're going to lean more defensive side just because of how good their offense was. So again, you look at this team and you think, all right, these are some competitors. These are championship caliber players that they're adding to this roster. I mean, some of these ladies have been in championships, won championships, been all stars. Like, these are good players. And Natasha Howard, Bonner, Sophie Cunningham has been there. She's done that. So I'm just Colson. I feel like they are going to add an element of veteran leadership off the bench depth, but Natasha Howard and Bonner slotting into that starting lineup. I think this team is just going to be an absolute force. And the more and more that they learn to play together, I think the more success that they'll start to have as the season goes on. I think it'll be a growing pain, but I think they'll learn, and they'll learn quickly. And again, you add championship caliber players to a roster, it changes the complexion, it changes the attitude. Like, this is a championship level locker room because Dewana Bonner, Natasha Howard, Colson, like, they're going to provide that level of intensity because they know what it takes. So I'm excited to see what these additions do for the Fever. Before we get into all of that, before we get into previewing what the Fever look like, looking through the schedule, we're going to talk about some of the growth of the league and some of the 2025 changes. So that way you're ready and you understand what's going on in this WNBA season. And you might know this, so you can probably fast forward this if you do know this. But the Golden State Valkyries will begin play this year, the WNBA's first expansion franchise in 17 years. And then two more expansion franchises are expected to arrive: the Toronto Tempo and the currently unnamed Portland franchise, arriving next season, 2026. And then, according to the Sports Business Journal, Dan Gilbert and the Cleveland Cavaliers ownership group are frontrunners for the league's 16th franchise. So the Valkyries join as the 13th team. The Toronto Tempo would be the 14th. That Portland team, the 15th. And then Cleveland is hoping to land the 16th franchise in a bidding war that has been very competitive. And the league, according to reports and what they've discussed, are looking to have 16 teams by 2028 and then 18 teams by 2030. So tremendous growth over the next couple of years. And we get our first expansion franchise in over 17 years with Golden State. So looking forward to that and what that team can provide. And we'll talk more about these teams as we start to preview them as we get into the season. I was thinking about doing like a WNBA preview, but it's just so much and so little time because we got so much going on with the Pacers. And I just launched this podcast right before the Pacers postseason. So next season, I'm hoping to do NBA and WNBA season preview. I just didn't have time to really do it this year for the WNBA. So we will do it coming up, but we'll still continue to preview each of these teams and talk about each of these teams especially before we play them for the first time. So, look out for those. We probably won't preview because of scheduling. We probably I'll kind of do like a shorter preview here of what to expect in that Saturday game. But because the season hasn't really started, we'll take a look at the Chicago Sky and what they provide, but it won't be too much of a preview. And then because of scheduling purposes, I'll be unable to record this weekend. So we will actually recap these Fever games next week, starting next week. So be on the lookout for that. That's when we'll do that. But because of schedule, I've had so many things going on scheduling wise, but as soon as June hits, I should be pretty free to record recaps and previews. So looking forward to that as we get further in the season. But May, because of graduations and all sorts of family coming in town and friends coming in town, I've been unable to record as much as I'd like to. So anyway, back to what we were talking about. Another change in 2025, there's going to be 44 games played this season instead of the 40 that were played in 2024. Playoffs formats pretty much stayed the same except for a couple things. So yes, there are the 8 best teams, 1 through 8 seeds, will make the playoffs. We don't do conferences in WNBA. I mean, we have conferences because when you do the Commissioner Cup, that's kind of how they decide who gets to play each other at the end of the Commissioner Cup weeks, which we'll talk about that too. But that's the in-season tournament. But that being said, they did change the format in which these rounds will be played, except for the second round. So the first round is that best of 3 series. Instead of doing 2 games at the home arena and then 1 game for game 3 at the away arena, they've now switched it, and they announced these last year, I think right before the playoffs or right after the playoffs for the WNBA. But they have announced that the WNBA first round series, best of 3, will now go 1, 1, and 1. So home team, top seed, will get that first home game on their home floor. Game 2 will be in the away team's arena, and then game 3 will be back if needed in that home team's arena. So still home court advantage for the top seed. You just have to go to the away team now, which is fair. I mean, that's not really fair to have the postseason just be held strictly on the home court for a lot of these teams. For just the first 2 games, if they win the first 2 games, they knock you out of the playoffs, and you can't even get to go play your postseason game in front of your home crowd. Second round is still the best of 5 series. That's the semifinals. It's going to be 2, 2, and 1. So 2 at the home, 2 at the away, and then 1 back on the home floor if game 5 is needed. And then the biggest announcement is that the finals will now be a best of 7 series, and it will be set up the 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, same kind of thing as the NBA does. So 2 at home, 2 on the road, 1 at home, 1 at the away team, 1 at the home team. So again, great balance. Playoffs go longer. Going to be more games this season. That's exciting because there's a lot of growth happening in this league. And speaking of growth, WNBA received a lucrative media rights contract set to begin in 2026 worth $200 million. The deal is 11 years, and it's going to have 125 games per season that will air on Disney properties, NBC, and Prime Video. The Fever this year actually have 41 of their 44 games nationally televised in some capacity. And I say in some capacity because they've got random channels and streaming services that are considered now national. So like Prime, Disney, and Disney includes ABC and ESPN. And then you have NBC. You also have like Amazon. I think you can stream what's called the Ion Network or Ion TV. Ion TV is part, I think, of it's usually like a free channel on Samsung TVs and like through the Samsung app, which is really odd because I have it on my TV and I've watched it before, but they're going to host some of the WNBA games there this year. But I think you can also stream them on like Amazon Fire Sticks, and I have to check to see if they're on Prime or YouTube TV because I have YouTube TV too. At this point, I've got pretty much every streaming platform, and you might as well just bring cable back at this point because that's how much we pay for it anyway. But yeah, Fever, 41 of their 44 games nationally televised. That is called the Caitlin Clark effect. So you will be able to see the Fever pretty much anytime you want. Speaking of which, I guess I'll drop this in now because we're talking about TV. The Indiana Fever actually launched a platform called Fever Direct with Endeavor Streaming. And basically what this is a package that is connected, and some smart TVs will have it. I think you can actually get an app as well, but it's called Fever Direct, and it is a uh, platform that is available across web, tablets, and mobile devices starting on May 15th. And subscribers are going to have access to up to 18 live regular season games alongside full game replays. The service is available to fans living within the Indiana Fever approved region across the Midwest, and a full list of the eligible U.S. zip codes are available on the Indiana Fever website. If you type in feverbasketball.com/fever direct, you're going to be able to see this article that I'm reading from. And if you want, there is a list on that website that gives you the U.S. zip code. So if you live in the Indianapolis area, you can probably get this. I know in Florida we can't. But the Fever will host the Chicago Sky on Saturday, May 17th for their opening game in the 2025 WNBA season. The first game available for subscribers to watch on Fever Direct will be against the Atlanta Dream on Tuesday, May 20th. I'm assuming Pat Boylan's going to be on. Like that's the TV group that'll be on there, right? Subscriptions to Fever Direct are available at feverbasketball.com/Fever Direct for $29.99 for a season pass. So you get 18 games if you're in that area for $30. And again, I don't know as far as national television and what that looks like as far as blackouts for Indy, because I'm not in the Indianapolis area. So I don't know what happens on those streaming devices, because I know sometimes you get blacked out of those games. So I'm interested to see what happens with this platform. I know some people are very excited. There are a lot of fans that are outside the Indianapolis Midwest area that are Fever fans, probably because Caitlin Clark, I'd imagine, but they can't watch the games because we don't really get that platform in our states. So that was a fun thing that was announced again on May 15th, which was Thursday. When is the 2025 Commissioner's Cup? So I want to talk about Commissioner's Cup here. The Commissioner's Cup is that in-season tournament for the WNBA. It runs from Sunday, June 1st until Tuesday, June 17th. So you just play your regular schedule, and then whatever your record is in these games, in this stretch of games, like they'll keep like a table on the website of the Commissioner's Cup's website and on the WNBA website to keep track of your records during this stretch. So during that stretch, the Fever will play against Washington at Cambridge. They'll play at Chicago on the 7th. They'll play at Atlanta on the 10th of June. They'll play against New York on Saturday, June 14th. And then they play against Connecticut on June 17th. So that's when that stretches. There's 5 games. The Fever are one of the teams that get, I think it's because they were one of the playoff teams. They get 3 games at home. And then I think that all the teams below them or something I think that's how they set that up. I read that somewhere, where teams below them in the seeding got, I think 8 and below got 2 games at home and 3 games on the road. So that's how they set up the Commissioner Cup. Whatever your record is at the end of that week, so like in that stretch, so from like June 1st to June 17th, whatever you do in those 5 games, whoever has the best record in the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference, the top teams will play against each other in what's called the Commissioner Cup's final. And that Commissioner Cup final will be held on July 1st. It is a game that will not count against your regular season record, where the other games that you play in that 5-game stretch do count towards your record. This title game, however, does not. So if the Fever can get to that Commissioner Cup final, they will not have that count against them. If you don't qualify for it, then you just sit at home and watch it. There's only 2 teams that qualify, one from the East and one from the West. And we'll talk about some predictions, because I have a prediction for the Commissioner's Cup, and I'm looking forward to that. But let's get into that. 2025 outlook for the Fever. The Indiana Fever made a big swing with their new head coach hire. Former Fever player Stephanie White steps in as the franchise's next head coach. White, who was the Fever head coach from 2015 to 2016, replaces Christy Sides. White, a perfect fit for these Fever. She's an experienced coach that knows what it takes to keep and make deep runs in these playoffs. And something that hasn't happened for the Fever since she was the head coach, a deep run. So we are looking forward to Stephanie stepping in. We would like a deep run into the playoffs. We got to them last year with Christy Sides, but I would love to see this team progress and at least make it to the. I think the next step is obviously pretty apparent, which would be that semifinal game. Right, getting out of that first round is what I feel like the Fever's goal will be, but we'll see. Her Connecticut Suns, and by her I mean Stephanie White, her Connecticut Sun teams ranked first and second in defensive rating, respectively, in 2023 and 2024, while still being an effective team offensively. She's coached stars too, including Fever legend Tamika Catchings and 2023 MVP runner-up Alyssa Thomas with the Sun. And then this hire continues White's history with Indiana. She played 4 of her 5 years in the WNBA with the Fever, was an assistant on Lynn Dunn's coaching staff for the Fever when they won their only WNBA championship, and brought Indiana back to the WNBA finals in her first season as head coach in 2015. She has a long history with Fever president Kelly Kroskoff. Kelly picked her in the expansion draft in 2000 and hired her for her first head coaching gig in 2015. Kroskoff left the Fever in 2018 to become the assistant general manager of the Indiana Pacers. She returned to the Fever that following season, taking over for former president Allison Barber, who stepped down from that role. Now, Kroskoff has lured White away from Connecticut. She had a year to go on her contract. And in those years with the Sun, 55 and 25, advancing to the WNBA semifinals in both seasons. And she recently worked with ESPN. She was actually on one of the Pacers Bucks. Was it Pacers Bucks? Yeah, I think it was. Pacers Bucks playoff games. So in Cambridge too. So, and Caitlin was there. It was cool. But yeah, Stephanie White coming back home to Indiana, back home again in Indiana. But yeah, really big addition for the Fever. They needed something like this. And much like their team that they share that building with, add a head coach with playoff experience who is one of the best NBA or WNBA coaches in the league. And I think could really have a really long history here with this franchise. I feel like this could be a relationship that lasts quite a bit with Stephanie. So I'm excited. She's got great basketball mind. If you ever listen to her on the broadcast, I mean, she is an excellent person, a great coach, knows her stuff, very kind, and just really, I think what this franchise needs, what Caitlin needs, what Aaliyah needs, what these veteran players are going to help lead together with Stephanie. I feel like this is a match made for everybody involved with the Indiana Fever. So I'm really excited about what the Fever's future looks like under head coach Stephanie White. Key additions: Natasha Howard. We just talked about her, the veteran. And this is from ESPN. The veteran forward figures to be a seamless fit with the Indiana Fever, given her experience and Flash nickname. Howard should thrive, catching passes from Caitlin Clark in transition, and brings her winning pedigree back to Indiana. She was here early in her career, first 2 years, I think. The 3-time champion and former Defensive Player of the Year fills the biggest position of need in 2024 and has was clearly an early target in free agency, signed pretty early. And then DeWanna Bonner coming over from the Sun, where Stephanie White was. Perhaps the most unexpected free agent acquisition came in the form of DeWanna Bonner, who, along with Howard, bolsters the Fever front court. Bonner adds leadership and versatility to the squad with a resume including 6 WNBA All-Star appearances across her illustrious career. Bonner should help bring a core with limited playoff experience up to speed very quickly. She's got experience as well in the playoffs. Sophie Cunningham Cunningham brings toughness and shooting, not to mention a big personality to the team. She was acquired from Phoenix Mercury as part of the multi-team deal with Nelissa Smith, departing to the Dallas Wings. Expect Cunningham to be used in a variety of ways, as she should help stretch the floor for Caitlin Clark and company. A very good shooter. She is tough as nails. She is a huge addition. I think when you look back at the additions, she's going to be one of those ones that, like, the league talked about some, but I think the media is really going to pick up on just how big of an addition she is, who's going to be able to help off the bench. And she's one of the ones that stabilizes the ship. Bonner as well, along with Natasha Howard, who's been here, done that. So those three combined with Sydney Colson. So Colson arrives only a season removed from the WNBA championship with the Las Vegas Aces. She should provide a backup ball handler and perimeter defender, as well as the ability to hit an outside shot. And she is a great personality. She is a lively person. So she should be great for veteran leadership and keeping that front office and the coaching staff on their feet, because she is a ball of energy as well. And then Brianna Turner, the former all defensive team member, should add length, rim protection, rim running, and screen setting to the team in a possible role, providing depth off the bench behind Aaliyah Boston. This is big. I mean, you get in foul trouble with Aaliyah. I mean, you've got a front court of Aaliyah Boston and Bonner, who Turner can spell at times. I mean, just a great defensive presence, but also can do things offensively. She's a great passer too. I was watching some highlights on her because I didn't really know as much about her. I mean, she's solid. I mean, she's a great defender. She hustles. She makes some really great passes as a big. So I'm very excited to see just what this bench can do, because I mean, this is to the point where, like, you add 2 starting rotation players, and then you add 3 great bench options, moving Lexi Hull to the bench as well. Like, I'm talking, this team is deep now. I mean, 9 players, 10 players deep. This is going to be a lot of fun, a lot of experience now added to this roster. I mean, infused with older players. Natasha Howard, 33, Sophie Cunningham, 28, Sydney Colson, 35, Bonner, 37, Brianna Turner, 28. I mean, you've added people that have been around the league, know what it is, some in their prime, some right outside their prime. DeWanna Bonner is a consummate pro. Like, just an unbelievable offseason for the Indiana Fever, a team that went 20-20, who's projected. I mean, you're looking at the betting lines, you're looking at some of the projections that some of the data analysts have run. It's like 23 to 25 wins for this Fever team. Projected starting lineup: DeWanna Bonner, Aaliyah Boston, Caitlin Clark, Natasha Howard, and Kelsey Mitchell. I mean, that's a top starting lineup. I mean, that's a top 4, maybe top 3 starting lineup in this league. I mean, that's a great job by the front office. And I mean, I'm excited because Stephanie White's such a great coach. You add in all this infusion of veteran depth and veteran starters. And I mean, in the postseason, DeWanna Bonner looked really good in that Brazil game that I was watching. Just, I think from top down now, you've got a team that can compete for a good spot in the playoffs and possibly a title. I mean, this could be one of your dark horse teams. I think that a lot of people are saying, like, the Fever could cause you some problems in the WNBA playoffs, which is always a lot of fun to hear, because that seems to be the stereotype for all Indianapolis-based teams. And then looking at predictions. So my predictions for the Fever: what does this look like in 2025? What happens? I think Caitlin Clark ends up being an MVP finalist. She's got a lot of competition. You got Aja Wilson. You've got Nafisa Collier. And I think Collier wins it. But Caitlin's going to be very close. And I say that because my next prediction is Caitlin Clark is going to average a double-double. I think she's a 20-10 point guard this year, which should put you right at the top of the MVP conversation. And she could very well win the MVP this year, especially if the Fever play well. The Fever are one of those teams where I think they're still missing something whether it's another player or just kind of that maturity of Clark and Boston take you to that next level, or you see how this veteran group does. Maybe they get another defender in, maybe they get another guard in. Like I don't know what that will be, but I do feel like there's still, and it might just be an experience or inexperience at this point where the teams above them, they've done this before. They've got great players, they've got MVP caliber players, but I just feel like the Fever are right there. I mean, they're going to be at a point where they're one of the top teams in this league. They're going to challenge teams like the New York Liberty, um, like the Minnesota Lynx. I mean, I think those two, in most people's predictions that I've seen, are headed for another matchup once again in the finals. The Aces are going to be a very, very difficult team to beat. The Atlanta Dream, uh, Seattle, but like if I'm looking at the top 6 teams, like the Fever are in it, and I'd even argue that they're in the top 4. I mean, I would have them probably 4th in behind the Lynx, behind the Liberty, and behind the Aces. But those teams are just so experienced and have done this and have competed for titles for years. So the Fever have a tough battle because the 3 teams ahead of them, I think, are teams that have the championship pedigree with championship players with really good additions, and the strength of their depth, like the Aces' strength. Um, you've got MVP caliber players in Collier with the Lynx, and then you got Stewie for the New York Liberty. So it's a tough league at the top, and I feel like the Fever are just like another. I don't know, like Caitlin Clark's there; she's a star. Aaliyah Boston's a star, but like you need superstar level. You need somebody competing for that MVP. And I think Caitlin Clark can get there this year, but I still feel like with her inexperience, it's her second year. Like, can she really propel this team past those other 3? Like, that's my big question. I guess if I had a big question for this group, it's how much does another year of Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark help with these veteran players? Because if these players stay healthy, I mean, this team can compete against these top teams. But I'm just interested to see what steps Aaliyah and Caitlin have taken. I do have a prediction that they'll win the Commissioner's Cup. I don't know. I just got a feeling. Like I feel like that's another step, another notch in the belt of like, all right, we're coming. We're getting ready to be contenders, but we're just not there yet. But I feel like over a stretch of 5 games, the teams that they play in those stretches, they play at home. For 3 of those games, I feel like they've got a good chance to reach that title game and win the Commissioner Cup, which would be fun because it's just about collecting hardware and confidence at this point. I mean, you look again, I don't want to compare, but like you look at the Pacers as well. That in-season tournament was a big turning point in their season last season and really propelled them against teams that maybe they didn't think they compete against. They did compete against. And I think if you put the Fever up against one of these Western Conference teams that comes out on top in that week, you're looking at an Aces team or a Lynx team that could be in that final as well. Seattle. I think you could make an argument where that could propel a team like this, a young team that's not quite got a lot of confidence in themselves yet. That could be a tremendous boost for this Fever team. I do think Stephanie White's going to win Coach of the Year because I do believe that the Indiana Fever will increase their win total by 7. I'm going to go with 27 wins. A lot of them project people, again, like I said, 23 to 25 wins. I've got them even higher than that. You play 44 this year. 27 wins means 17 losses. But I still think that places you about 4th in the WNBA. 4 out of 13, really good. They will get the number 5 seed in the playoffs as far as like who they're having to play against. I think getting home court advantage is going to be really key for this Fever team, who's still a younger team with an infusion of vets. And I think that'll be just a good step in the right direction of making it to the next round. I think that this team is headed for the semifinals. And then I think they're really tough out for the teams that they have to try to beat in the semifinal round. So again, I think that the Fever have a really good team this year. I mean, I'm really excited about all the veterans that they've added. Natasha Howard will be a lot of fun coming home of sorts. Stephanie White, again, coming home. They're ready to prove something. DeWanna Bonner doesn't have to prove anything anymore, but I think it's fun because she's moving on from Connecticut's moving on from her. She's got something to prove. I'm not done yet, kind of thing. Sophie Cunningham, Mercury, move on from her. She's got something to prove. And then Sydney Colson, Turner, again, things to prove off the bench as depth, but can really add solid veteran presence to this locker room, to this team. And I think that they can get it done. So that's kind of a run through real quick of like what I expect from this Indiana Fever team. And I think it's going to be a really great season. I'm really excited about the additions that they've made. Obviously, Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. But let me know what your thoughts are. You know, what do you see Caitlin Clark becoming in her second year? What do you see Aaliyah Boston becoming? Are these all-stars once again? Is Kelsey Mitchell, can she keep up that same kind of contribution? Like, what does that contribution look like with now Howard and Bonner in the starting lineup? Like, Kelsey Mitchell may not have to shoulder as much, and that might be better down the line as the season goes on, right? You can attack different teams from different directions now. You've got two more people that are adding fire to the, fuel to the fire and attacking at different punches. Again, depth is killer in these leagues. And we've seen this time and time again in all these leagues across the board. If you have good depth, if you have good veteran depth, a lot of times you can cause problems. So what are your thoughts? Where do you guys think that the Fever land? Are they a top 4 team in the WNBA this season? Do you think that they can get past that semifinal round? Do you think that the goal should be that semifinal round? Should the goal be finals? Like, I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. I'm going to kind of tamper my expectations of this team just a little bit. I know Caitlin is a special player, but I still feel like there's some growth to be had and some learning to be done. So that's what I think. The Indiana Fever 27-17 semifinal run, and then get bounced in the semifinals, but a very tough series in that best of 5. So those are my thoughts. Leave your comments below if you're watching on YouTube. You can also rate us over on podcast platforms such as Spotify and Apple. We are on all socials at the Pacer Fever Show. So X, Instagram, TikTok eventually. We will be more active, and then Facebook as well. Make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. It helps people find us where you can comment, like, and subscribe. And we really appreciate it. Again, if you want to jump on as a co-host, we are looking for somebody else to join the show. If you want to join it full time or every once in a while, I'm always looking for some help. So if you are out there and you're listening to this and you want to join along, just shoot me a message and we can jump on and chat and we can see how the chemistry is, maybe do like a run through of an episode. And I'm always looking forward to adding people, even if it's a guest appearance here and there. So let me know. Also, if you want to talk Pacers basketball, we're also doing that. And this will be on the same feed as the Indiana Pacers podcast. It's the same podcast show. We'll just flip back and forth. That's why it's called the Pacers Fever Show. So that way we can flip back and forth between the two. But we're covering all things professional basketball here in the state of Indiana. And with that being said, I'm really excited for Saturday. Again, that game's at on Saturday, May 17th at 3 p.m. Eastern time on ABC against the Chicago Sky. That Chicago Sky team is going to be a very good team. Something that I think you really have to watch, obviously, is Angel Reese and the intensity there. But can she propel that team in her second year? What does that look like? Cardoso, what does that look like too? I think that the Chicago team, not as good as the Fever, I don't think, but again, intriguing in the way that they can play. I think Angel Reese is going to be a good player in this league, obviously. But I just feel like Chicago missing more pieces, more veteran pieces that they really would need to compete with this Fever team. They're going to rely heavily on Angel Reese. They're going to rely heavily on her ability to score and to really defend against this Fever team. I just feel like Aaliyah Boston's going to have the upper hand, Bonner as well. I'm interested to see how they handle the Fever, because I think that'll be another thing that you'll watch for throughout the season is, I think just how good that the Fever are, but how deep they are as well. Like, it's going to be tougher for teams to try to defend because, again, you had all this veteran experience, and I think you just cause more of a challenge defensively that I'm not sure that a lot of teams are accustomed to, especially ones that are not as deep as this Fever team, because there is this is a very deep team that is going to be very well coached, and we've seen what that does in other leagues and how that plays in this league as well. Is that when you've got a really good coach who's making those adjustments, it's difficult to beat them. I just don't think that the Chicago Fire, I'm so sorry. I also do a soccer podcast, if you can't tell. Chicago Sky, I just don't feel like they can compete against a team that's going to be playing at home, debut game for some of these players. Natasha Howard coming back home. You got Dewana Bonner, who's going to want to make her statement, put her touch on this team, on this game. But again, I think they handle their business against Chicago. Let me know what your predictions are for this game coming up, because I'd be interested to hear just what your thoughts are, how Chicago can do against the Indiana Fever. Looking at the Fire, or sorry, I keep doing that. Chicago Sky. It's going to be Courtney Vandersloot, Ariel Atkins, Michaela Onyenware, and then I think that's how you say that. That's how you say that. Angel Reese and Camilla Cordoso. So, yeah, interested to see what your guys' thoughts are. Can the Fever beat the Chicago Sky in their first matchup of the season? We will be back to recap that game next week, talk about that. We will also be previewing some of the games coming up for the Indiana Fever, because we're starting the season. It's exciting. So again, when you're watching these first couple of games of the season, just be mindful of the fact that it is the first couple of games of the year, and typically the chemistry takes a little bit to click. I thought they were clicking very well against that Brazil team. They really started to pick it up. So looking forward to see how they progress from their 3-0 preseason, their season last year. I think that this Fever season is going to be very exciting. But again, thanks for listening. Really excited about this game on Saturday. Can't wait to talk about the Indiana Fever again with you starting next week.